folks, continuing with the geopolitical situation, which is in kind of chaos because of the way the COVID is ratcheted up in India, the way what's happening in the Middle East between Israel and the Hamas. So there seems to be some kind of a ceasefire that's holding at this point in time. Iran, the nuclear deal. More importantly, the China's aggressive attitude continues. So here's what we got, right? Which is interesting, and and like I said, this is really important. The first thing I'll read out is truce mediated by Egypt comes into effect. Israel-Hamas ceasefire takes hold. Both sides claim victory at the end of 11 days fighting. Important, I think Israel has not won this battle for sure. Maybe in a sense of war, but what is in terms of the objectives, Israel has not gotten anything. If anything, Hamas has achieved its objective, so I'd say they are the victors. Why? Because one, they've sidelined the Palestinian Liberation Authority, which is obviously weakest at this point of time. And the second is obvious, there's no the possibility of these two countries giving and taking right now probably on a two-nation theory. It's difficult because both sides, the political systems are extremely weak, and that will involve a lot of land solutions based on redistribution of land. Right? But I think Hamas came out ahead because it showed it kind of built a bridge back with Iran. It also managed to get all the Arabs on its side. It also created confusion between the Arabs who had set up diplomatic channels with Israel into a tough spot. So I think they got what they want. And the other thing what is interesting is what they got. It says Iran says deal reached to remove most sanctions. This is an important landmark achievement for Iran if it's happened, and this is something that's going to start turning the war, in my mind, the war machine going again in Israel. Watch that space, because Israel's going to come up with all kind of information to suggest that Iran is up to no good or is breaking the nuclear deal. And then, like I said yesterday, Iran had junked us as far as the gas was concerned. And I'm saying, like, it doesn't make a difference. We got options, right? But then it comes out and says Iran wants to rope in India later for gas projects. Now, whether the Indian side is trying to cover it, save its face, or Iran is generally saying it, who knows it? And I tell the Indian government, who really cares at this stage, folks? Cheers. And now, after this, let's focus on our region. I personally always thought that the vaccine export policy to the region and to achieve our geopolitical goals, whether it was to as countries like Morocco, like I initially told you about Morocco, critical for India's fertilizer requirements. Obviously, this region is critical for India's own personal safety. As you can see now that, all of this region which we had promised with the Maldives, Nepal, Bangladesh, and now what are they? They don't have vaccines from us, and it was a great policy. Where we messed up was at hubris at the leadership, or the niggardly thought process that without spending money, the private sector would deliver. What they didn't realize is not everybody is a crony capitalist with deep pockets and access to Indian banks like Adani or Ambani, right? Those are their boys, right? Poonawalla is not, or Serum Institute, or the Covaxin guy is not, biotech, right? That's where we lost the plot. If somebody had sat down, some smart IAS guy, which unfortunately is an oxymoron, because that's not going to happen, right? Because they're all become chamchas at this point in time, right? If somebody had sat down and done the planning, you really could have given the 30,000 crores up front, or 10,000, 20,000 crores, and ramped up production to cater to India's requirement, which was 2 billion vaccines, and to cater for another billion for the rest of the world. And that, my friends, would have been the coming of age for India. Unfortunately, like always, we kicked the opportunity right in its face, as we've done repeatedly through the year, because of our hubris and isolationist mindset. And so this is interesting. So when Jaishankar steps out, vaccine supply tops agenda as Jaishankar visits US next week. Set to discuss COVID ties with business forums. Not only that, and apparently a lot of countries, whether it's Maldives, have asked Jaishankar to represent their case there too. Now that's the kind of leadership India needs in South Asia, right? Instead of just, without planning, doing things, and that's the problem, right? This is another very interesting thing. We spoke about Afghanistan in the last one, and the whoosh and the vacuum that's being left by the United States, and now everybody is kind of concerned. Iran is concerned, Russia is concerned, China is concerned, Pakistan is the most concerned. But India is concerned. I think that all the biggest collateral damage is this process is going to be Pakistan. However, tribal elders broker local truce between Taliban and Afghan government. Is the tribal leaders in eastern Afghanistan have achieved something that has long eluded world leaders, a ceasefire between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Eventually, only those guys can resolve themselves, but the United States must continue to provide protection. Like I said, what's happening there, folks, right now? All this violence that's being perpetrated against Shias and against women is probably trying to somehow force America's hand to stay, right? But look at what's happening. For the other person I've got to worry about is Pakistan. Because Pakistan is really sitting on a thin edge of a cliff, right? Like a steep edge of a cliff. As Saudi Arabia backs India, Pakistan dialogue, this is what he went there, right? However, a separate readout issued by the Saudi side on the meeting between Khan and the Crown Prince made no mention of India or the Kashmir issue. Okay. What is true is the fact, and this is something that you must hear, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and the night of power. This is by Mahesh Deva. He says Pakistan-Saudi relations have lately been at their lowest since the 80s, and both sides pursue a nationalist agenda, taking the other side for granted. Okay? Alright. The visit had good but limited optics. Although PM Khan was welcomed at the airport by Crown Prince MBS, he was not received by King Salman. Both sides agreed in a key agreement to establish a Saudi-Pakistan Supreme Coordination Council to be co-chaired by the Saudi Crown Prince and Pakistan PM, mirroring a similar body with India, with which Pakistan seeks parity, although its bilateral engagements are small. Look at this, the bilateral, right? In 1920, for instance, Pakistan-Saudi trade was 2.18 billion, or less than 1/5 of India's 33.09 billion, right? However, conspicuous silent on several common concerns such as Iran and Gulf security. This was telling. By avoiding the usage of the usual Pakistani lexicon on Kashmir, the Saudis seem to have succeeded not only in steering clear of India's sensitivities, but also created a more pragmatic template for Pakistan's position on the dispute. The joint statement is curiously quiet on two issues, likely on the Pakistan wish list, Saudi economic commitments and the Pakistani diaspora. While a framework for Saudi financing of the project in Pakistan was signed, there was no mention of any specifics. A Saudi official subsequently put a figure of $500 million. It was just like neither here nor there, right? Then he says, as an interested party, New Delhi needs to watch the incipient realignment between Islamabad and Riyadh. More substantive economic ties with India have led Riyadh to develop a better, more objective understanding of the Indo-Pak dynamic. Yet it would be unwise for us to take Saudi Arabia for granted, and that's for sure. And this is where I said what's happening in Uttar Pradesh and the demolition of the mosque, etc., are going to play into the hands of the jihadis and Pakistanis, folks. And here's the thing: what's the build-up? What happened when you're talking about the ceasefire between India and the LOC being quiet is this. In build-up to ceasefire, though NSA Dowell meet ISI chief in UAE last year. See, UAE and Saudi are critical for Pakistan. But no matter whether they like it or not, they are reliant on them for their religiosity, their religious template, and more importantly, economics. If anybody can wield a stick on Pakistan now with unblinkered eyes, it's these two areas, UAE and Saudi Arabia, where India now has built extremely good strategic links essentially thanks to this government. Cheers, folks. Now let's move to the other component where I think China is also burning its bridges and having a difficult time retaining it as a pearl, as a string of pearls around India, is Nepal, right? And this is what's happening in Nepal. Nepal PM faces confidence vote amid party revolt. Oli loses trust vote in Nepal, has room for new coalition. But then, all of a sudden, Oli is appointed Nepal PM again after opposition fails to form government. And this happened because Nepal's Mahadesi parties helps Oli stay in power. So here there is obviously to keep the Congress out and the other Communist Party, which is kind of strange. Where obviously seems there is this article alludes to the fact that India may have something to do with this, right? To keep Oli in power, and that's why Oli may be kind of shifting its alliance to India. All of a sudden, a lot of his statements are pro-India and not anti-China, but more pro-India, right? But then suddenly, just a week after Oli reappointed PM, Nepal president tells parties to form new government by 5 p.m. today. He says, just a week after Nepal President Bidya Devi Bhandari reappointed KP Sharma Oli as Prime Minister, she has unexpectedly told political parties that they can stake claim to form a new government by 5 p.m. on Friday. The order comes on a day that saw Oli facing multiple setbacks, both legal and political. However, the president's decision to kick off the process to form a new government has been criticized by constitutional experts. Oli must resign first for the president to initiate the search for a new PM. Constitutional expert. This is kind of strange happening, right? And then, obviously, inform Nepal. Oli opposition stake claim to form new government but they claim, both sides are claiming numbers. When you total them up, they don't make sense at all. And it says Oli and opposition alliance both stake claim to form government. But this is what Jaishankar is doing in the United States. And like I said, in this policy of creating vaccines in India, it must include Bangladesh, Maldives, and Nepal and Bhutan at the bare minimum. It says Nepal looks to vaccine for India, seeks global assistance. Let me put it this way. Even the Chinese CCP leaders are not taking Sinopharm. Did you know that? They are importing Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca for their leadership. While this Sinopharm is being pumped across the world at prices unheard of, right? And reeling under second wave, Nepal looks to India for aid, and India must step up. I know India is in trouble, and a lot of people like you have stupid people like sometimes Rahul Gandhi, and also like our own Pappu Kejriwal, who does everything to finger foreign policy because he doesn't know anything, right? This I thought was a sinister event with repercussions, which somebody will discuss it at some point in time. China marks separator from Nepal on Everest. China is trying to claim, why I say this is China is taking claim of every property. What folks, if it just takes the top and then kind of it slides down to the base and Nepal has lost Everest forever. How about that, right? And this is what shows you what a brute without any thoughts for global safety China is, right? China rocket debris falls into ocean, NASA criticizes. This is all over near Maldives and between Mauritius and Maldives. This is what it is, folks. And the other area where I saw, because China is really hurting there, is Maldives, and what has happened. So, ex-president of Maldives hurt in bomb attack. Suspect in attack on Maldives speaker has Islamist group links. Now here, anytime you have Islamist group links, Pakistan comes into play. Anytime Pakistan comes into play with Islamist group links, now you're almost sure China has funded it and has a hand in it. So you can see this while it's being blamed on the jihadi. I would actually take it as far as the CCP and President Xi and his policy to regain influence in Maldives, folks. Cheers. The other place China seems to be running into trouble, somewhat of in terms of public opinion and quotes, is Sri Lanka, because there has made a major land grab, right? Land grab, and this is what has been India must tell the public of Sri Lanka. It says, China built port city panel in CL needs public nod. It says Sri Lanka's top court has decided that some provisions of legislation to set up a powerful economic commission in the Chinese built port city violate the constitution and require approval by a public referendum to become law. Okay. So what does Sri Lanka do? Sri Lanka House approves bill to create panel for Chinese port city. Sri Lanka's parliament on Thursday passed a law installing a powerful economic commission to administer a huge Chinese luxury oceanside development after altering elements of the bill ruled unconstitutional by country's top court. The bill to create the Colombo Port City's economic commission passed with a 149-58 vote in the 225th House. That is controlled by him anyway, right? Lanka parliament not for Chinese port city bill with amendments. Now I find Rajpaksa and the crew totally ingratiated and caught by the gazungas by the Chinese because of their financial dealings, folks. So watch this space. What is going to leave is Sri Lanka much, much poorer, folks. Cheers. Jai Hind.